Okay, so let's check out this quest then. So Thranduil's request. So just a quick note, it's very disappointing that this blue here isn't the correct blue, but oh well, you just have to live with that. It should be a light blue and should be slightly raised, but oh well, it is a custom quest. It's probably the only graphical glitch in the whole thing, by the way. Anyway, so what we've got to do is we search the encounter deck for the Red Eye and the Forest Gate. Now, the Forest Gate is actually an original quest card, because you can see from the quest, this coin symbol is the symbol for this quest, and these are all from the core set. So that's where the Forest Gate comes from. So let's have a quick look at the Red Eye. So it's somewhere around here. There it is, the Red Eye. Now this card is very much like the Nameless Fear. Now it just sits in the staging area, you can't do anything with it, and it just adds continual threat, which is an extremely good mechanic. It was extremely good in Khazad-dûm and likewise in this, and that is, anyone who plays this game knows that as the game progresses it gets easier and easier, because once you've got all your allies out and you've got all, you're all powered up, it's very hard for the encounter deck to really take you out without resorting to ridiculous treacheries that just kill you in one go. So, but what happened in the Nameless Fear and also with the Red Eye, the threat would keep gaining. Like the more cards you use, the more powerful the threat of this X would get. So the game would get harder. It would level out that rise in player power would get leveled out. So extremely good. And it also means that if you're going to have long games, you need to have pretty high questing to do this. Let's have a look at this this card. So it's immune to player effects, and it cannot attack whatever. And X is the number of attachments in play. And this is the basis of the hot basis. God, I can't even speak, of the entire game. And that is that it's all about attachments. It's all about artifacts that drive people to greed. They're very, very thematic for Lord of the Rings, I think, which is about that ring that sort of people, they get lust for power or whatever from. So the more attachments in play, the higher the will is. And of course, in Lord of the Rings, most people play billions of attachments. There's even decks that don't run allies that are quite powerful, that have 0 allies and just 1 million attachments and events. So as attachments or conditions or items come in, only those 3, so it has to be an artifact, a condition, or an item, the character needs to make a corruption test. Now, if the corruption test fails, its controller must discard a number of cards from his hand equal to the character's will and discard the corrupted character. So that's pretty hardcore. The corruption tests aren't as bad as you might think. They're a bit like the Golem escape tests, and they work off willpower, because your will is stopping the corruption. So let's have a quick look at the rules at how corruption tests are handled. There's it'll be in here somewhere. Somewhere in here is, why is my computer so slow? Whoa, what is going on? There it is. Okay, so let's have a look at the corruption test. I think you can see that. It's just down here. I can zoom in. Oh, it's so weird doing it this way. You see that? Okay, corruption test. So what you do is you check whether the character is, well, let's just read it. To check whether a character withstands malign temptations, sometimes he is forced to make a corruption test. That test consists of the following steps. Add together the printed cost of all player card attachments attached to the character performing the test and any modifiers. So, because there's things like corruption test +1 will be written on the encounter cards. So you basically just add up the cost of these attachments, and that gives you the corruption value, right? And then each player has an opportunity to take actions, do whatever, and each player may then influence the tested character by exhausting any number of characters, but not the testing character itself. So when you do a corruption test, the tested character does not actually exhaust to pass the test. But if his will isn't high enough, you can tap one of your other heroes, or one of your other characters, beg your pardon, and it will add their will to the guy being tested. So if you've got 2 will and you tap, Tharlan, he now has 3 will to test against his items. Okay, and then you just calculate the sum of the testing carrier's will and all the people helping him, and compare it to the corruption value, and if it is the valid number, like if it is equal or higher, then you pass the test. And here's just a little example. So it's very, very simple, okay? In this particular example, he has, unexpected courage, which is worth 2, and he has old coins, which is something from this set, and it's got a value of dwarf +1. So he has to make a corruption test of 4, okay, which he's going to fail because he's only got 2. But if we tap this other dwarf, he then has 4, right? But Gimli himself does not tap himself to actually pass. So it's pretty simple. It's very easy to do. It's not complicated, even if my explanation is pretty complicated. But it's quite a decent mechanic, I think. So that's basically what this card is all about. So let's have a quick look now at the quest. So we click over to 1B. Boom! When revealed, reveal and add to the staging area 1 encounter card for each player. Players may not advance to stage 2 of this quest if they don't control 1 treasure card or have claimed 1 captive. Now, treasure cards and captive cards are part of this quest. You'll see them in a sec. So you just can't finish this until you pass that. So let's have a look at 2 now. When revealed, each player searches the encounter deck and encounter discard pile for 1 non-tracker orc enemy and reveals and adds it to the staging area, then shuffle both decks. Put 2 resource tokens on each tracker enemy in play. Now we'll talk about trackers in a sec. They work off resource tokens. So basically all this card says is you search the encounter deck, all the counter discard pile, pick any orc that is not a tracker, put it into play, and then give all the trackers resources, and then shuffle the encounter deck. And that's that. So that's pretty cool. And you cannot pass B if there are enemies in play. Okay? So, I mean, unless it's you can only advance to the next stage if there are no enemies in play except for trackers, spies, and the flame, obviously. So, there's 3 types of enemies that'll be there, but you can't pass until everyone else is dead. And finally, we have this one. Whoa, my computer is so slow. Okay, when revealed, reveal and add to the staging area 1 encounter card per player. Then, if there is no non-tracker orc enemies in play, repeat adding to the staging area 1 additional encounter card until there is a non-tracker orc enemy in play. Now, this is really important because see where it says here, reveal. That means that it's actually revealing. It's not being placed. That means when revealed effects will trigger from when revealed treacheries and stuff like that, okay, and even enemies. Any when revealed effect will trigger during this stage, and I've actually asked him, and that is intentional. Okay, and you may not pass 3B unless there's those words and thing. So that's pretty much it. It's interesting, you cannot advance to 3B because you actually have to stay on 3A except for unless those trackers are in play. And once you're in 3B, it's just heading home, and it's got some slight variation to the scoring, the rule scoring, okay? And all you got to do here is get the 7 things. So basically what we're doing is, Thranduil's quest is all about I'll read it to you. Let's just read it. 1A. Orc raiding parties have struck the elven camps inside the Woodland Realm. Survivors are reporting their goods plundered and homes destroyed. Worry about the wealth and prosperity of his people. Thranduil requests you to locate the orcs and exterminate them. Additionally, he asks you to free any captives you may find, keeping an eye out for the stolen goods. Okay, so that's the crux of that's what this game is about. You're going off, you want to kill the orcs, you want to get the goods, and you want to get the slaves back. And the orcs themselves, there's normal orcs, but there's also the raiding party orcs. And the more powerful your people are, the more corrupt they get. And that's the idea behind this quest. So now let's go through and let's have a look. We'll start at the top here, and we'll just go through some of these, the cards themselves. First thing we've got is the Ancient Sword Artifact. And one of the things that's interesting about this, I'll talk about that in a sec. Anyway, this is guarded by a non-tracker, non-spy enemy. And what that means is that in this game, the guarded objectives have specific requests. In this case, it has to be a non-tracker or a non-spy. And that means if you reveal those ones, they just get discarded. Okay? Now, guarding enemy gets -1 will to a minimum of 0. And action. If unguarded, exhaust a character to claim, blah, blah, blah. And it becomes a restricted attachment that gives it +1 attack, +3 instead when fighting an orc. Okay? So it's quite a powerful weapon. But again, if you look down, it has a corruption value. If you're a Duradane, it adds 1 to your corruption. Dwarf, it adds 2. A Gondorian, it adds 3. But if you're a Hobbit, it's actually -2 from your corruption test. Okay, Rowan +2, Warrior +1. So the way these cards come to you affects, and it's thematic in the type of character types that will get corrupted by various different items. Okay, so now we have a Treachery. Battle Fatigue. When revealed, each player must make a corruption test for that character under his control that currently carries the most wound tokens of his characters. Add an additional 1 to the corruption test value for each wound token upon the chosen character. If at least one chosen character has no wounds, then Battle Fatigue gains Surge. Okay, so that's a bit of a long, drawn-out explanation, but basically what it's saying is that every single person in play has to choose a character, right, that he controls, and that has the most wound tokens on him, okay? And you have to do an additional +1 to the corruption test value for each wound token upon the chosen character. So even if you choose someone who doesn't have any attachments, you're still going to have a corruption value to test here. And remember, corruption tests don't tap the character, they only tap the people helping. And if at least one of the characters has no wounds, then Battle Fatigue gains Surge. So this is an interesting card. It's one of those cards where it doesn't really hurt you very much, you know. Like you're not going to be worried about drawing this card, right? But it's interesting is that it penalizes you for having a very well-built deck, and I think that's a little strange. Because if you've got a well-built deck, you shouldn't be accumulating wounds, and if you don't accumulate wounds, then this is going to Surge, and obviously Surge is one of the worst effects in the game. Interesting card. Let's go to the next one. Spacebar. I press spacebar. Do something. Alright. Bloodthirsty Orcs. Okay, this is the normal Orc. When revealed, each player must place 3 wound tokens upon 1 or 2 different characters he controls. Okay, so that has an extremely vicious when revealed effect. 3 wound tokens is plenty to kill almost every single ally in the game. Most allies have 1 or 2 at the most, you know. So I mean, this is a really, really full-on card, and one that you will not want to be pulling. It can be cancelled with a when revealed effect, but apart from that, there's not a lot here that really has to worry you. I mean, he's got an attack power of 4, but he's got no defense, which means any kind of feinting or quick strike. I think tactics in general would be a good deck to run against this. Okay, now we have a Clandestine Orc Lair. 2, 4. So 2 threat and 4 to clear. Now let's have a look at these things, because some of the locations are very, very clever in this game, in this quest. Immune to player card effects. While Clandestine Orc Lair is the active location, all Orc enemies gain Surge +1 and will +1 will +1 attack. Forced. At the end of the refresh phase, if Clandestine Orc Lair is in the staging area, increase each player's threat by 1. Okay, so basically this is like an orc lair, right? And it's really, really cool. It just means that the orcs just flood. They're running out of the cave at you. You know, I love it. It's just so thematic, this quest. That's what I love about it. You know, they're just coming out of the cave, just constantly attacking you. And, you know, there is a swarming and by surprise. So so it's threatening and it's extra attack power. It's really additionally. And its shadow effect is just 2 additional shadow cards, which is pretty heavy. So that's 3 shadow cards this card would get. And yeah, so that's a pretty cool card. And next we have Concealed Lookout. Now this is one of the really interesting ones, and you'll notice that it has 0 threat. And there is quite a number of 0 threat things in this set, and that's because it has tons of surge. And I love this idea of having lots and lots of surge, putting tons of cards into the staging area, but not all of them have threat. So it's not just overwhelming you with threat, but it's giving you lots of options. Your travel options are varied, you have lots of different effects, and there's a lot of travel options like this one which are actually beneficial. And that is something I've been talking about that I wish Lord of the Rings FFG would do a lot more of. You know, you saw it with Grimborn the Old, and there's been a couple of quests with it, but I love the idea of you're on a quest, you're on a mission, you might find allies that, you know, that are helpful, you might find cool places to hang out or streams that are refreshing you or whatever. And I've always thought it's always seemed off to me that the encounter deck was just densely packed with bad stuff. You know, like I always wanted cards that were beneficial, that made me want to travel places, you know. And this is exactly what this quest is all about. Like I said, it's all about surge, pulling a lot of stuff into the staging area, and then having all these choices for your travel phase, which really brings the travel phase back into the foreground of a mechanic that you want to act in, you know. And I mean, it's very cool. So let's have a look at this. So it's got surge, obviously. We just talked about the surge. And while Concealed Lookout is the active location, the first ranged attack each turn gets +2 attack, which is huge. Huge. And before progress tokens are placed in this card, you can cancel all progress tokens and increase each player's threat by 1 for each progress token cancelled. So you go to the Concealed Lookout and you can hunker down in here. But if you're hunkering down in this lookout, the enemy knows where you are, so your threat goes up. So they keep attacking you. So like I said, it's very, very thematic and so well thought out. But you can cancel progress instead of putting it on it, so it doesn't, you know, so you don't have to leave this location. If you want to if you want to sit in the lookout for a while and kill all the enemies in play, then you can do that, but at a threat cost, obviously. But you can't spill over. It's like, see, this has got 1 to pass. If you get 2. You can't cancel 1 and leave 1 on the quest card. It cancels all the progress. So if you get 2 and you take 1 off here, you actually have to pay 2 threat. Anyway, very cool card. Next. Okay, so is that right? Yeah. Another when revealed, Corrupted by Power. Okay. Not my favourite art, that one. Anyway, when revealed, each player chooses a character he controls currently committed to the quest with the highest will, then raises his threat level by double the will of that character. That character makes a corruption test with a modifier of +1. So this is probably one of the worst treacheries in the set, okay? I mean, double the will is full on. And that is really, really vicious. And it's not printed cost either. So if you've beefed it up with, you know, augmenting willpower cards, then that counts, okay? And then if that's not bad enough, you then have to do a +1 corruption test on any attachments to that hero, and the hero itself is already tapped, okay? So it's, you know, it's a very, very, very vicious kind of card, and one you definitely want to keep an eye out for. Okay. Come on. Spacebar. God, it's so slow. Deceivingly quiet. When revealed, if there is 1 or less location card or enemy card in the staging area, reveal and add to the staging area 1 encounter card per player. Okay, so, I mean, not much to say here. It's just a simple reveal more cards if there are no monsters, you know. And what is this? Shadow. Attacking enemy gets dealt X additional shadow cards where X equals 1 or 2 or 2 or 3. If there are 1 or 2 or 3... What? Flip around and immediately resolve each card by itself. Okay, so this is a pretty strange strange. What? Attacking enemy gets dealt X additional shadow cards where X equals 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 if there are 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 players in the game. Okay, so that's really clunkily worded, but basically what it's saying is if you're in a 1-player game, okay, you get 1 extra shadow card. 2-player game, you get 2 extra shadow cards. 3-player game, you get 2 extra shadow cards, and 1, 2, yeah, and a 4-player game, you get 4 extra shadow cards. I think that's what it's trying to say. That's terribly worded. And then you flip them around and resolve each card. Okay, and here we have our first prisoner, guarded by a non-tracker, non-spy enemy. Okay, and the guarding enemy gets +1 will and -1 attack. I guess -1 attack is because he's guarding. You know, he's not attacking. But anyway, when you capture this, you place it in the victory pile, and you know this is one of the objectives of the entire game is to capture these Elvis prisoners, and there's like about 5 or 6 of them in the deck. Oh, right, I see. Yeah, it is actually. It was always going forward. It's just that there's 6 of them in the deck. Okay, Goblin Town Wargrader. Ooh. Very, very scary card. Look at this. 4 defense. You know, defense. That's huge. 4 attack, whatever. But 4 defense is massive. So, I mean, we're looking at what? 9? Yeah, it's like 9 damage to kill this guy in one go. And let's have a look at what he's got. After Goblin Wargrader has finished its first attack for this round and it has no resource token upon it, it immediately engages the last player. If the Goblin Wargrader would be destroyed through wound tokens and it does not have a resource token yet, cancel and clear all damage upon it and place 1 resource token upon it. Okay, so again, what's all this with the slashes between words and stuff, whatever. But basically what it's saying here is this is a mounted creature, okay? And what he does, he runs between people. He's running all over the place, attacking everybody. So if you attack him, after he attacks, he then runs away and engages the next player. And he always engages the last player. So in the 2-player, 3-player, 4-player games, he will actually attack twice, unless he's already connected to the last player. Okay. So when you want to, if you want to optionally engage this guy, the last player should optionally engage him. Okay, and that way the first time he comes down, he's only ever going to attack once. But otherwise, he's going to attack, move to the last player. Then when it's his turn, he gets to attack again. And if you kill him, you don't actually kill him. You just put a resource token on him, and that's supposed to signify killing his mount. So now his mount's dead. He no longer has that flipping ability. Okay, and he's just a normal card. Again, a very, very cool card. I really like this card. Gold Dust, and it's another objective, and this objective does get attached as an attachment, and we spoke about these before. It's got a corruption modifier on it. So if you're a Dale, it's +2. A Dwarf, it's +3. If it's a Gondorman, +3. No love for Gondor in this set, man. And if you're Rohan, it's +2. Okay, so you want to stick this on a Hobbit. You want to stick this on a Silverin. Okay? And note that most of these cards can be attached to characters. Okay, so there's a lot of choice here. You really want to spread out everything. But remember, if your character dies, Gold Dust would be sent back to the encounter discard pile. Okay, and now we have Greed. This is, when revealed, each player must choose a character with the highest victory value among his characters. Determine this through the sum of all victory points upon the treasure cards attached to that character. If a player has no character with the treasure cards, he does not choose a character. Exhaust those chosen characters, then each of those characters must make a corruption test modified by +1 for each restricted or treasure card attached to them. Okay, so yeah, it is true, the wordings are very, very long, but this is actually not that hard. Let's have a quick look at Gold Dust. Gold Dust has a victory value of 1. So if you had Gold Dust, old coins, the sword, or whatever, they all have victory point values, and whoever has the highest victory point value is the one that does the test. And then it's just a corruption test +1 for each restricted or treasure card, okay? So it's then this would be +1, okay? Then if you had the old coins, it would be +2. And then if you had, say, Blade of Gondolin, that would be +3 because that's a restricted card. If you had then Plate, that would be another restricted card, which would make it +4. Okay. Hidden Cave. Immune to player card effects. Travel. After traveling to the Hidden Cave, the first player looks at the top 4 cards of the encounter deck, reveal and add 2 of those cards to the staging area, and place the others on the bottom of the encounter deck. Okay, so this is an interesting card. It's got a deck scouring ability for the encounter deck. I mean, it's not too good, it's not too bad. It gets you, put 2 in the encounter deck, 2 in the staging area, 2 at the bottom of the encounter deck. Either way, pretty cool card, not much to say about it. Old coins, okay, we've talked about this. Is basically the same as the gold, except it has different corruption values. Dale +1, Dwarf +1, Gondor +2. Told you, man. He hates Gondor. Gondor, they're all scumbags from Gondor, apparently. If you're Gondorian, you are an untrustworthy scumbag. And +1 from Rohan. Okay, even though it was the Rohan king that was completely corrupted, you know, the Gondorian king, he wasn't corrupted, he was just nuts. Okay, Orc Ambusher, and here we have a tracker card. I think this might have been the first, I haven't been paying attention to this, but he is actually a tracker, and he cannot be optionally engaged, and most of the trackers are like that, okay? And if you look at, say, the old coin, guarded by a location, see, it tells you that it's guarded by a location. And if we look at the gold dust, guarded by a non-tracker, non-spy. Right, so some of these items, they're forced to be guarded by different types of characters. And in this case, it's an Orc Ambusher. Cannot be optionally engaged. And look at his threat, 49. So why would this guy ever attack? Well, it's because he is... he can only attack once he gets a token. Let's have a look at his effect. Forced. At the beginning of the encounter phase, if Orc Ambusher is in the staging area and has 3 or more resource tokens upon it, then it immediately engages the player with the highest threat. So that is, I mean, that's all it is. There are card effects that will add tokens, like say that quest card effect, and that will make these attack. And I think this is a pretty cool idea. The actual token placing mechanic is really cool, but you don't place tokens very quickly, so you'll end up with a lot of these guys who will never actually fight them because, you know, they're tracking off in the woods or something. But the idea is that the orcs are tracking and tracking, and they're all up in the staging area, and then they finally find you, as in they all get their tokens, and they all attack at once. You know, do a big raiding party to try and get back all the goods you've stolen. Very thematic, very cool. But look at this guy, 4/7 attack. Not cool. Okay, now we have the Orc Patrol, another tracker. Cannot be optionally engaged, and that's common for all the trackers. Forced. At the beginning of the encounter phase, if Orc Patrol is in the staging area and has 1 or more resource tokens upon it, then it immediately engages the player with the highest threat. So it's pretty much the exact same thing, okay? But this one only requires 1 token. And another, oh, this is just an Orc, this isn't a tracker Orc. The engagement cost of Orc Raiding Party is reduced by 3 for each claimed treasure card. Orc Raiding Party gets +1 defense for each treasure card in the staging area and +2 attack for each treasure card controlling the players it is engaged with. Now again, this is just goes to show you the kind of thought that's gone into this quest. If the card is in the staging area, it's owned by the encounter deck, and the orcs are protecting it on their way home to wherever the hell they come from. So if that is the case, they get +1 defense to help them defend, right? Then, if you've got the treasure cards, they're trying to get their stuff back off you, so they get a +2 of their attack. Very cool. Now we have Refreshing Creek, and note another 0 will. Surge, it does have Surge though. Boo! Travel. After traveling to the Refreshing Creek, each player may choose 1 of his characters to remove a single wound. So, I mean, again, I would love to see more of these kind of cards out of official quests. I want to see more more of these cards, like locations that are just fun to travel to, that make the traveling stage more interesting. We can go here and we can heal a bit. Perfect. Love that card. Okay, Ring of the Warrior. What is this? That's an artifact. Okay, so guarded by non-tracker enemy. And it has a huge corruption value. Dale +1, Dwarf +3, Gondor +3, Hobbit -2, loves the Hobbits, Rohan +2, Sylvian +1, Warrior +2. So that affects everybody. It seems that Sylvians are completely immune to corruption for some reason, even though they are totally not in the stories. But yeah, so basically you want to have Sylvians. But of course there are other corruption tests besides that, you know, so you can't just stack all these things on your Sylvians. Anyway, if unguarded, any player may exhaust a hero to claim this objective. Okay, nothing. That's nothing there. Alright, here we are. Restricted. Attached hero gets +1 will, +2 attack. So it's an extremely powerful artifact and really aids you. But it has a victory point of 4, which of course, you know, that when revealed thing that does the victory point totaling and stuff. So again, like all the cards, there's a plus to using it and a minus to using it. Love it. Okay, now we have Spies in the Sky. Surge. Players cannot optionally engage Spies in the Sky. Only characters with the range are eligible to attack Spies in the Sky and may do so while it's in the staging area. So that's an interesting effect. These guys cannot be attacked at all unless you have ranged. And if you have ranged, you can actually attack them while they're in the staging area. And Forced. After an event card is played, add 1 resource token to each tracker enemy in the staging area. So, again, this interesting card. This is one of the cards that is designed to fuel the tracker mechanic. But like I said, the thing is, you can control it by just not playing event cards. So, and then it's not that hard to kill, because you can kill them with any ranged character. So, while I think the tracker mechanic is very, very good, I think the placement of the tokens is not quite as good as I would have hoped. What I think it needs like some blanket place tokens, you know, like some treacheries that just place tokens, I think. And now we've done him. And the Thick Forest. Travel. It's 3/7, my god. After traveling to the Thick Forest, each player must choose and discard allies until the number of allies controlled by that player is equal to or lower than the sum of his hero's printed will. Okay, so that is an interesting card. Really thins the deck. So basically you just add up all your heroes' will. Say you've got, you know, 5 will total, then you have to have 5 or less allies. Really, this kind of the card is one of those cards that's kind of bad, I guess, if you get it at the late game. But I mean, most people are going to have pretty high will, you know. I mean, even I guess there's some decks that'll run like 3 will amongst all their heroes, but even so, you're looking at like 4 kind of minimum. At minimum for your printed will on your heroes. I guess 6 might be a more average will amount, but 4 absolute minimum, I reckon. You know, I mean, well, obviously you can get to 3, but I think most people are going to be running 4, and 4 allies is plenty. 4 allies is plenty. So no one cares about this. It's a good card, but not a threat. And finally we have Thievery. When revealed, the first player chooses a treasure card with the highest victory points that is attached to a character. Discard that treasure card. Each player must exhaust a character with at least 2 will. If every player exhausts the character this way, cancel the discard. Okay, so the ordering of this wording is a little bit weird, but basically it's saying you have to discard a card, but if every single player exhausts all their characters that have 2 will or more, and if each player exhausted a character, this effect is, the discard itself is cancelled. So that's pretty cool. And once again, it's got an interesting shadow effect where you place wounds on the highest defending character, blah, blah, blah. Interesting card. I like this card a lot. Okay, Woodland Realm Bridge. Surge. While Woodland Realm Bridge is the active location, all characters get +1 defense, and it has that same cancel progress effect that we saw in the Lookout. Again, love this card. I love all these cards that have positive effects. And that's it. That is Orc Hunt. So I hope you guys like this quest. It is available on Board Game Geek, and it is made by Marcel, who why do I keep calling him Marcel? Made by Manuel, who is actually posts as Hilarious Pete on the FFG forums and is the creator of the Strange Eon plugins that allows people to make these custom quests. So send him some support, and I'm sure he'll be happy to hear from you. Anyway, that's it. If you're wondering how to print out these, I have made a video which just discusses how to print out and utilize custom scenarios. So check that out, and I will see you next time. Oh yeah, but did I tell you I love this quest? I love this quest.